So we'll call the meeting order for the special call meeting for the workshop on the 21st. We will rise for the invocation, which I will recite. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings that you give us every day. We thank you for the opportunity we have to serve as leaders for this wonderful community. Lord, we ask that you bless us with wisdom. We ask that you keep us mindful of all the impacts that our decisions will have. Lord, we lift up Robert to you and ask that you bring him back to complete health, that he may rejoin us in his service to the community. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Follow up with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Item 4 on our agenda is discussion regarding the fiscal year 2020-2021 City of Mount Austin Enterprise Fund budget. Mr. Jones.
Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm sorry that, it requires a couple of special call meetings, but we thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk through what our thinking is and gather any input from you folks as we're going forward. And we have a brief kind of opening salvo to share with you all. And first and foremost, I want to tell you that the way we have conducted business in public works is changing. I have directed Justin and his team that we want to move from a reactive workforce to a proactive workforce. In my 2 years that I've been here, we have functioned in a reactive mode. So I can't tell you how many times I've heard the word we're fixing water leaks as opposed to fixing infrastructure problems, and we need to move beyond that mindset as a city and in public works. That was part of the reason for the change in leadership, and I'm pleased that Justin is taking this on and he's doing an exceptional job of what we're doing. So for today, we fix water leaks when leaks are detected. We fill potholes when potholes are reported as needing filled. We replace pumps when they fail. Everyone in public works is a generalist. We don't have anybody that's a specialist. So you can be working on streets one day and fixing water line the next, and working out the sewer plant the next day, which is all good and well, but we're a growing community and we're going to have to start developing skill sets as we move forward to be able to keep pace as a community. Our issues drive our workload, so we don't determine what it is we're doing every day. We let the problems determine what we're doing. And what I want to do is change it to a proactive workforce where we identify repetitive issues and develop long-term solutions. So if we have a water leak and it's the same area 2 or 3 times in a row, we should be developing a solution to repair that water line or replace it so that we don't keep spending city time, energy, and resources on the same problem. Right now, I'd like to get to the point where work meetings are decided. We have a preventative maintenance program on all of our pumps and all of our wells. We really don't do that now. We don't have a scheduled PM program for anything we're doing. And then we start developing short and long-term range planning in our thinking. We develop a plan as to what we're going to do. We get concurrence from the council, and we start working that plan as we go forward. So that's our goal. Here's our current situation. We have a long list of deferred projects. You've seen it in the slides that you were provided earlier. We haven't had the funding to fix it all. We have aging water and sewer infrastructure that we need to address, again, projects that have been postponed. And we have capital equipment that we own, such as backhoes and vehicles that we do not have a PM program in place. We don't schedule regular preventative maintenance. We fix tires when they go flat, change spark plugs when the darn thing don't start, as opposed to we have no plan for technology enhancements in public works. That's something we need to get to. There is technology out there that would basically eliminate the need to have people reading water meters. You can push a button in here and get everybody's water meter readings instantaneously, saving us manpower and hours. And there's an expense to that, and that's something we need to be working for. And as you heard from the auditor, and we talked about before, we're operating in our water sewer fund at a deficit. We have no reserve. Now we have capital resources in place. We've been able through some creative staffing ways, been able to build that reserve so we can operate at a time of peril, COVID, or a tornado or something else that comes through. We don't have reserve. So, and we learned a tough lesson here at City Hall on COVID-19. All this happened. We had 4 times the delinquency rate on water bills. The very first month that COVID came out, people were concerned that they would lose their jobs, so they were late. They ended up paying those bills, which was a good thing, and they've been very consistent about paying them since then. But we had to take action internally in case that was going to be a pattern going forward. We didn't know where our sales tax collections were going to be. You know, if all these closures were going to have a negative impact on our business, we had to shore back what we're doing. So we put hiring freezes in place, pay increases in place, we put projects on hold. We did all that waiting to see what the actual numbers would be. Well, it turned out they're favorable, and we were able to put all those things back in order. But the lessons were when we entered this, we only had 33 days worth of operating capital revenue. 33 days is frightening. You know, that's a month you're out of business. You can't pay your people, you can't do whatever else you have to do without tapping into your general fund, and now you're depleting that side of your resources. So we know that's something we have to do. And lastly, we've had no rate increases in 2 years. 2 years ago, we took a 4% increase. Last year, we didn't take a water rate increase. We managed our way through it. So this year, we're going to ask the council to consider a modest increase in rates. This is a realistic budget. I think you probably had a chance to look through it line item by line item. It provides first and foremost the establishment of a reserve account. This will allow us to put $60,000 by the end of the year into a reserve that we designate as a reserve, and we'll be coming forward with an ordinance that speaks to where we want to get our reserves as a city, so we can have that in an ordinance. Allows Public Works to hire 3 workers, and I will let Justin speak to that a little bit. But that enables us to now start developing specialized skill sets, doing PM work, and all the things that we need to do to become more efficient in the long run. Provides the ability to plan work and work a plan so we can determine what it is we should be doing daily, and then picking up all those odd things that happen in fill. And it addresses 2 and probably a few more. I think Lynn and Justin will speak to this projects that we have put on hold out there that we need to do water and sewer infrastructure projects in the older part of our downtown. Good news is that the newer parts of our community are getting all new infrastructure, new streets, new plumbing, new all that stuff, so we can focus our attention on that. So lastly, we require approval of our budget, and I'll turn it over to Justin at that point.
Good afternoon. So as you see, I'm asking for 3 new employees right now we have the building clerk, which is Ashley, the deputy of public works, which is me. And then I'm going to add the utility maintenance worker in the water fund. On the sewer side, we're going to be asking for 2 new employees. And like Lane touched base on, we're wanting to have these guys come into work and know what they're doing on a day-to-day basis instead of catching dog one day, mowing the next day and stuff like that. So I'm asking for 3 new employees in the public works side of it. These are the projects that got put on hold last year. We spend anywhere from 25 to 30 hours a month just on these streets right now. Clement Street, I mean, we can't even get a sewer camera down at 6 feet. So we're always having people stop up and backing up in their house, which is a concern for the city with insurance and reasons and all that good stuff. The next couple of slides are the projects that has been put on hold or that we have done. As you see, we're not asking for a lot in 2019, or 2020, it's just 2021, just for the replace the sewer line and then finish Jefferson out where we don't have to work on these at night and saving money and overtime and maintenance and manpower. We have well 3 that we've been putting on hold for, I don't think it's ran for 5 years. It pumps 200 gallons a minute. So that'll be a big help to get fixed, in the future. And, excuse me, be a help get it fixed in the future for where we don't have to take so much water from GTUA and surface water. So we can get this fixed and put it back online. Like I said, it's been down for 5 years. So.
Yeah, and then if you've seen the slide, all the cogs in the wheel work together, and there are only so many variables that we use to create the water fund on the revenue side and on the expense side. So as Lane and Justin pointed out, the expenses and costs are something we can do. It's a very lean budget. Justin is asking for 3 new employees, but with the workload they have, they're spending an inordinate amount of overtime. The other thing that helps on the revenue side is the number of customers. And obviously we're in growth spurt, so having more customers paying the base rate, paying for water is going to create a synergy and more shoulders holding the load for what we need to do. But we're not, obviously we're not there yet. As we keep adding customers, we can flatten out the base rate, flatten out and just go on the consumption rate, but that's what it is. The other option we have is to do alternate revenues, additional fees, tap fees, the penalty, the late charges, things like that. You can adjust those fees. Those, as you'll see in the future slide, those don't create a lot of income, but they help the base rate in what you're trying to do. The number of gallons you project to sell. This year we projected to sell 150 million gallons. We're right on track to do that. This next budget you're going to see we're projecting 160 million gallons, which is about, I think it's 105 new houses, which we kind of staggered and get into that too. We've done the projection rate of the new homes coming in, so we're trying to keep up with that. And once we get to that level, we can do that because everybody's going to have automatic sprinklers in the new homes, and we can count on a little additional revenue on that. You can play with the base rate, which is what we're talking about, and then the tiered volume rate. So, the more water you use, once you get above 10,000 gallons a month, you pay a higher rate for that extra water between 10 and 20, and then so on and so on. So that your people who are using the system most pay more for it. So those are the cogs in the wheel.
Before we move on, let me ask a couple quick questions. There was this word on the previous slide I did not understand, cathodic protection. What is cathodic protection?
Cathodic protection is On the water system, water has a polarity to it,
Okay.
positive and negative. So if water is left alone, it'll catch onto the iron in the pipe and create rust.
Okay.
Cathodic protection is it's a sacrificial anode that draws that polarity away, and it takes the rust away, and the water line stays basically rust free.
Okay. So
So,
it's a fairly cheap work we have to
Yeah,
replace annually.
well, especially with as much steel, the more steel and metal pipe that you have in the system, which is the original system, that is a regular operating feature that systems that do have a lot of metal pipe in the ground use, because it does extend the life of the pipe quite a bit.
And it extends the life of the tanks itself. It helps
Yeah.
out with that too.
Yeah, the metal tanks around town, anything with a steel surface, it draws that polarity and the basically, the ionization of it.
Okay.
Makes it.
The other question you mentioned, water we take out of the pipeline. I know there's a minimum amount we may as well use because we're gonna pay for it one way or the other. What percentage of that minimum are we currently using?
As of right now, it's zero.
Yeah.
We do not use it right now.
We're not, last year we did 90% of that, and the operating procedure is we'll go up to about 95%. Because right now, any of the overages, Anna and Melissa are paying us back a good portion of that we don't use.
They buy from us the water?
They buy for us, so they don't get charged for the overage with my Texas.
Okay.
So while until House starts taking water, that methodology's in place. But once House starts taking water, that payback's gonna disappear. So it's at that point, we plan to just start bumping that take or pay number and using it.
Okay, why didn't we use more last year, just wells?
Well, this year, we have an operational issue we're chasing down. There's a valve out there that's closed. It's not allowing water on the north side of town.
Okay,
So all the water coming out of well 5 across from the college is pumping down Cartwright Road, all the way around the loop, and then back up and then up Forest Moore Park. That has created a surge in pressure at where we're taking, and we can't overcome that without shutting that one off. Well 5 is a lot more important than well 6.
okay, thanks.
But again, that's just some of the planned work that we would like to do to get there. We just can't get there yet. This is the proposed current budget. On the funding side, we're seeing about $3.1 million in water and sewer sales. We're seeing about $120,000 in fees, and then about $290,000 in the sanitation contract. For some reason, solid waste is in the sewer budget, and so it's basically money in and money out. It's a net zero to the fund, but it shows up in this budget. So we show that revenue coming in, and then when everybody pays their water bills, it gets dispersed to cover that cost to pay. Lane looked like you were gonna say something. No,
It's not a net zero anymore. There's a fee on the sanitation solutions contract of $1.50 per household that we take to help offset the cost of the young lady that manages that process for us.
And then then on the expenditure side, we're gonna do about 1.8 million in water expenditures, 1.7 in sewer. And then, as Lane said, trying to start that reserve fund at 60,000 to get that budget to balance. We always try to balance the budget day one. Obviously, without a reserve, we have to balance the budget or do better. So, that's where we're going.
Well, real quick, on the fee side, with all the new homes that we have, all the new connections that we're setting up, I would think that number would be higher. Why, is that just not projected for 2021, or?
Well, we're projecting 180 new homes that next year will be signed up and added to the system,
Okay,
which is that's a little less than 10% of the current system. So It's a staggered, once we get the new subdivisions on the ground, it's about a 4-year ramp up till we actually have those customers in-house. So the fees, we're just tracking like the tap fees, the late fees, the connection fees. And just kind of, it's following the growth.
So what you're saying is this number is based on what we saw come in 3 years ago? essentially?
Yeah, it's a percentage of the current budget going forward, and we just kind of, we
And
put it
that,
in and track, we're able to track.
that doesn't include impact fees, which is meaningful. We have that as a separate item in the budget.
Yes. Last year, Lane moved impact fees out of the enterprise fund, and now it's a budget to itself. Because impact fees are collected for new growth and new utilities.
Yeah.
So they have their own, and we'll have, and there's a slide later that talks about what
But
that
they
is.
can only be used for infrastructure.
They can only be used for infrastructure for new development, yes. Okay. And this is what it looks like on a pie chart, and all those fees, the 17% in the sewer fund is actually the solid waste contract. And then the 7% are those other fees that you were asking about, Ryan. So you can see that water sales and thus sewer sales are a tremendous amount of the projected income. And this is how that money's spent. You can see the blue, well, here I go to the colors again, so I'm in trouble, but the blue is
Salaries.
salaries, so, 14 and 16%, so about 15% is salaries for your employees. You have, your regular O&M, which is the biggest chunk of it, and then you have your debt service, which is the orange, I guess that's orange.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
What's the majority of that debt service? What's the majority of that debt service?
There's about 11 or 12 loans in there.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's what I'm asking, is it all,
Yeah,
is it all the bonds on the loans?
it's CGMA, it's, I mean,
Eight of those, I think, are CGMA or.
Yeah, okay, but nothing else, no other
No.
debt operations outside of that?
Well, there's 14% on the sewer side, is that for the sewer plant, are we still paying on there?
Jennifer.
Can we do a sewer line?
Oh, yeah, that was
push?
the pipe
That's all I
purchase
can think of at the
line was
moment.
part of that we did across Ballard Road there. That was part of it, and then I think you had some on the original sewer plant,
Okay,
which is a 20 or 30-year note, which was built in '05, so.
thanks.
This little colorful item is it's really the rate machine that we use. It's a spreadsheet that the TCEQ did for the city about 6-7 years ago. And the little, there were so many variables in it, it ties into each line item on the budget and then spits out a rate. So this is kind of what we always go back to this page to see where the rates need to fall to hit the budget that we're proposing. And the top tier of thing is the current budget as it is right now. And the bottom tier is what the proposed is. And as you can see, there's about a 4% increase proposed across the board there. And then there's the in the bottom blue box is 160 million. We put in, again, one of the variables is how much water you think you're gonna sell, because we can populate that. If we expect a big growth in the number of new subdivisions, we can pop in 170, 180, 200 million gallons and see what that does to the rate. Because as you sell water, it takes it off the base rate and puts it out in the consumption side.
And this is all base rate?
Yes, well, the base rate is over on the second from the left column. That's the base rate, and then the next column, if you had a 5,000 gallon bill, that's your bill, 10,000, 20,000. So you kind of read it down the columns after that.
That's what I'm saying, so the blue is the base rate.
The blue is the base sales, The blue up there is the tiered rate.
It's a
That's the proposed
consumption,
tiered rate.
consumption rate.
Yeah, that's consumption.
Yeah, the base rate is right where Jennifer has the arrow right now. So that's kind of that's what spits out. When you plug all the numbers in for everything that's in that $3.5 million budget, it spits this out. And, you know, there's several iterations that go back and forth before we settle on a number to bring to you, so you can see it.
That's the minimum bill anyone would have without using any water for first.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
$76 plus the trash collection.
Plus the trash collection, right? And that's going at 73, it looks like. So,
The 170.
I remember 2 years ago, I was talking with you on, I brought this up, when we did the last increase. And I still don't understand when we get to a point from enough citizens to lower the base rate, but increase the consumption rate so that,
well, yeah, and that's when that blue number gets high enough that we can project that we're gonna sell that much water.
so that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
when we get to that point? How many people do we need to be hooked up on the system in order for us to actually come into one of these meetings and decrease the
Yeah,
base rate in the bill and actually charge more for people that want to use water leisurely or however they want to use it?
yeah, well, that's a moving number, obviously, with your expenditures, but one of the cities to the south of us is still struggling with that, and they've had the growth rate, and they still can't get
You're
there.
referring to Anna?
Yours is still quite different than ours.
But, but there is a time when that happens.
What's Anne's population?
About 12,000.
I think they're more than that now. I think they're 13 plus.
Yeah.
They were behind the curve on their water rates. They got their water rates up for a long time and weren't ready for the growth when it came. So they're at 10, when they were at 10, 11, they were still having to climb higher just to get the infrastructure in because their base infrastructure couldn't handle the subdivisions that were coming in. So their base rate was high.
And you'll see now that their base rate, and when we get to the comparative slide, their base rate is now lower, but they've kept it there for like the last 3 or 4 years. Trying to get the consumption rate to do it, but they're,
If I'm not mistaken, at TNL, they had a workshop on this, and this is going into home rule cities and everything else. I think they said if the city did it right, usually somewhere between 13 and 15,000 is when it starts to take off, depending on how fast it grows.
next one. So here's a comparison of the current Van Alstyne rate, which is in the second, or actually third column, the new proposed rate, and then the adjacent water providers, including Marilee, Anna, Melissa, Howe, Tom Green, Gunners, Lima, and South Grace. So you can kind of see the details on your sheet.
Why are the meter rates so much, so different? Like, why are we so much more than everybody out there?
On the base rate, that's just to balance the budget with the water sales that we're gonna have, we can raise. If you look at,
Well, I'm talking about the sewer meter rates.
well, because we've just historically just left ours comparable to what, the water rate is, so you pay the same per unit cost. So, some change in that around, you know, you can,
And we're $10 more for a, quarter or 3/4 of an inch, meter rate than Anna. $12 more than Melissa, and that's where it's driving the overall cost. I see what our water costs are in comparison, they're actually less.
Yeah.
Or the sewer rates, I see that, I'm sorry, the, water rates, but the water meter rates are quite more.
Well, and that's somebody that's made that decision to lower the base rate and rely on consumption. And that decision is, the base rate, once you set the base rate, that's guaranteed, once you set this base rate, you're gonna be guaranteed that for 12 months coming in based on your number of meters, unless there's a big exodus of meters, which it never is, but you're guaranteed that. The growth cities, when they get to that point, can rely on the future consumption to help mitigate that, so they lower their base rate, and then they're taking a bet that they don't have a wet year and that people continue to keep using water. And so it's a little riskier out on the consumption side than it is on the base rate side. And
But how does that affect the meter rates? I guess I'm just not understanding the meter rates and why is that different than the water rates themselves? Are they tied together? Is that what you're just?
yes, they're exactly the same.
But you're just showing what it would be on a typical monthly basis?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's your base rate, yeah, the meter rate here is your base rate. Here,
Okay.
and then, the bottom tier is if you used for, 5,000, or, I just, Jennifer just sent over the numbers. The average bill, is about 9,600 gallons a month.
Okay.
So say you use the 10,000 curve, you go down to that bottom tier, we're at 76, narrowly, if you use 10,000, you'd be 78, and at 72, 73, 98, you can see that we're very competitive at an average bill like that, and then, we'll be at 80, and this is the current bills for those cities, because we don't know what they're gonna budget yet. So next year we're always working a year, looking back a year at kind of neighboring cities. But knowing that 9,600 / 10,000 is our average water bill or water consumption, that we always look at that 10,000 gallon tier to see how we compare and where that is.
Question for you? My turn.
Yeah, thanks.
So when you're, can you tell me what we're using for a number per household? You said we have 180 new homes that we're estimating with it. Per household, what are we estimating? That they'll use gallon wise for water,
This is what we just bring forward the 9,600 gallons.
that's it.
Yeah, we just assume the average, we don't assume they're gonna be exceptional
So
Usually-
180 new homes,
times.
every home 9,600 gallons.
The calculation though isn't quite that simple. I think we have 185 new homes that our developers are telling us should be sold and lived in, but they won't all come month one. So you have to plan on about 15 a month as you stagger up to that. So the average ends up being a little bit less, if that makes sense.
Last year we had how many a month?
105 new homes.
Confirmed between January 2019 to December 2019, we had
It was 105.
105.
Yeah.
How many so far this year?
I think it's up at 80, 89, 90, somewhere in the 80, 90 range. And that's going back to October, that October budget year. So we track it based on October to September.
So are you saying as we grow, the water meter rates, you may start to go down, and then the consumption rates go up?
The consumption, the overall consumption of the city goes up. So as we're charging $3.50 a gallon or whatever the number may be, we have that additional revenue. It's like a balloon. We have the total revenue, We have the guaranteed part, which is the base rate, and then we have the flexible rate, which is the consumption rate. As we get more usage, the consumption side gets bigger, and we can start lowering the base rate to still meet that same revenue need that we have.
By base rate, you're saying water meter rate?
Yes, yes.
And that also includes the infrastructure, having the infrastructure.
It really boils down to some element of risk, if you will. Your base rate is a guaranteed revenue stream that you can plan to make infrastructure improvements and do all that kind of thing. If you switch to consumption, and like we've had the last couple of years where we've had very wet seasons that have lasted a long time, we would not have made it. And we're not large, and we don't have a large enough consumer base yet to be able to take that risk. So that's kind of why we do what we do right now. The risk you can take is you can switch to consumption rate, but then you may be postponing or delaying projects. And I'd kind of like to fix a few things before we get to that size and, you know, we can do more of a PM type of operation. So anyway, that's why that's the philosophy and the mindset we're using right now.
So in running the numbers, there's no way, you're about 4% on the base rate increase, 4.3% on the consumption rate increase. So there's no way to equal out the same numbers by maybe taking that consumption rate from 4.3 to 5.5 and taking the base rate and only doing 2.
You can.
Play with the numbers that way, see if that works.
Yeah, you can play with the numbers that way. I think Jennifer's got.
I know you take a little more risk, but you also get to give better news to the, you know, citizens,
Yeah.
you know, in Austin. So I don't know. I know there's a little more risk involved with that because it's now based on consumption and not base rate. But, and it doesn't look like much when you're talking about $1.65 of a base rate change, but, you know, it is. And so, I don't know, did you play trial and error with that before we came up on this, or was it just, no, hey, let's plug it in to get the base rate to get to where we are to get to the budget numbers?
No, we played with the consumption, the total consumption, we played with the revenue side, we played.
Okay.
Yeah, we did all that, and then to make a budget that allowed for the expansion and the projects.
Landed on this.
It ended up on, yeah, and what we've typically done is if the base rate went up 4%, basically you crank the tier rate up 4% to match it so that you get that, it's comparable at that point.
And understand, Ryan, in this budget, we completely eliminated things like vehicles and, you know, this is a very lean budget that's focused on water and sewer, if that makes sense. And that's how we kept it at 4. I mean, when we first looked at this, it was 8, I believe.
18.
And that, you know, no, thank you, I'm not going down that trail. So we went back and pared our budget down. Well, I'm with you, I get it. So to be able to get to something we feel is fair and reasonable, especially when you consider that we did not take any rate increase last year. So
Yeah.
4% is a reasonable
I
amount.
just have one more question from an operational standpoint. Can you, on each of the sizes of the lines, if you decide to move one up, you have to move them all up?
No.
So you can actually look at, if they're gonna get a bigger line,
Well,
having a higher
yeah,
increase.
the way the rate sheet works is it only takes the base 5,000 consumption and figures out what that needs to be to get to the revenue. It doesn't do the upper tiers, because that's really, once you get above the 10,000,
Yeah,
That's
you're talking about businesses.
Yeah, you're talking about
people-
businesses, you're talking about the school district, you're
But
talking
they
about.
have more resources too as well to opt in more for citizens.
Right. Yeah, no, and what bigger cities have done is really jump up, and if you look at the other cities' upper tier rates, some of them are $9 per 1,000 gallons versus, our upper end is right about 6, I think.
Yeah, 500.
Yeah, so, they're almost over 50% more expensive per 1,000 gallons. But that's not guaranteed, right? You're counting on big water users using it all the time and it could, and it's not seasonal because,
The school.
Lane and I always have this discussion, we come into April and May and the water budget's only at about 30% of where it's gonna be at the end of the year in October. And it's because May, June, July, and August, we sell a lot of water and we're able to make up what we don't sell in the wintertime.
And that's where going to consumption is a little bit frightening because we do the majority of our water sales with 90 days left in a year. So you're making expenditures hoping that your revenue is going to be there. So that's why a base rate makes it a little bit,
The majority of your water comes from irrigation,
yes.
irresponsible irrigation. We will turn it on and let it blow all night long. They have leaks in it, they don't pay attention to it, they do whatever. So I know from personal, if it comes down to consumption, I put water in my yard. And then when you have rains like this, like the school district, they'll turn theirs off too because it's so wet, they're not gonna water it. And then, what I'd be interested in seeing is because we haven't had kids in school, what their consumption rate is. Because they haven't had 3,000 kids flush toilets in the school right now, so.
But they're still flushing at home, so.
Yeah.
They're just trading out the location.
So,
Using their lease.
I have one more, because you said on this chart, you
Yes.
should, so these are populating from our,
yes,
from here.
yes, yeah.
Can you tell me which line items are populating, so I have something to reference? As far as like, which ones are plugging into this that filters to this spreadsheet?
This is the third spreadsheet, this is the third tab. The first tab is the water budget, it calculates all those line item numbers in there, does a total, and then calculates based on, we also have a meter count and what we call an ESU, an equivalent service unit calculation, which is a 3/4 inch meter is a unit of 1, and a 1 inch meter is like a 2.5, because there's 2.5 times the amount of water you put out a 1 inch meter than you can in a 3/4, and it goes up as your meter gets larger. So we have that equivalency that's also in your impact fees, and and that gets converted to your base rates too, because of that same multiplier. So there's an equivalent. So there's that calculation, the water fund expenditures gets through the spreadsheet, and we can share that with you. But then we have the ESU calculator, and it says and then it comes back and calculates how many gallons you think you're gonna sell at what rate, which is the 5,000 rate. And then that provides cash, and then it spits out what the base rate needs to be to match that budget. So
But it's basically on the 5,000 or not the 10,000, when most right now?
it's on the 5,000. It's based on the dollar number on the 5,000, because the more you get out on the tiers, the riskier it is that you're gonna sell more water than not.
Right, but if our average consumption is 9,600, why would we stop starting that at 5 instead of the 10?
Well,
I understand the risk or whatever down the road, but if our average amount is 9,600, seems like we're lowballing going to 5.
Well, that's just a safety factor that you have incorporated in it. We could figure out what their average bill is at 9,600 and then figure that consumption and then go. But again, remember 4 or 5 years ago, the average for consumption was about 6,000. So it's going up, but.
It can change.
Yeah.
We're not trying to beat y'all up, it's just, it's a.
No,
It's a really bad time to
Yeah.
present this to people,
No, we get it.
I don't feel comfortable with it, that's why.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So, and then the first page is the water fund, and it's got that, and then the second page is the sewer fund with those expenditures, and then it has the same equivalencies multiplied to it, and then that spits out your base rate, unit number, and then your consumption number, and puts it on the sheet to balance your budget.
Can I ask a well question? That well 3, you said it's been out for 5 years. How does that affect the city? How did that change?
Well, with growth, we're gonna have to start taking GT and get more water from surface water. So, but if we can get, well water, it's also cheaper, we don't have to pay for it, we have well water. So that will help us turn that one on and not take as much GTA water.
When we have that chlorine smell and all that, is that usually from the water line or well water?
That's from well water, and it's,
Mixing?
yeah, it's mixing because we have to catch it at well 6, which is a surface water, and adjust it compared to what GTA puts into it. So we'll have to catch, and now I have it on where they call me before he adjusts it, and then I can go out there and adjust mine. Or
It
off.
does seem like it's been
Right.
there.
But we're not taking any at all, because we hadn't took none in 2020 at all.
So well 3 being up will just prolong you having to use
Correct,
the line.
We're not,
correct.
but are we including rehabbing well 3 in the proposed budget? Or no? Yeah, that's something we need to do in the future.
Oh,
We have postponed that for another year. That's about a 200 to 250,000, about $200 to $250,000 line item that we just couldn't fit in his budget at this point. Well 3 is 200 gallons a minute. We did well 1, which is the one right across the street here. We did that 2 years ago and it had been off for about 3 years itself. Got it operational, got it back in service. And then well 2 is 200 gallons a minute, or well 3 is 200 gallons a minute. If we open the valve at well 6 for the CGMA, we can get up to 800 gallons a minute. Right now we're taking 0. Right now our average use is about 110, 115. So we've got plenty of pumping capacity as long as they keep working to feed what we've got going now and get ready for the future. We're gonna need well 3 in the next year or so, or 2 years at least. And then,
I thought that was part of the reason you needed to increase.
no,
rates.
that was just that's another one of those deferred items that we just can't ever seem to get prioritized. And with,
For the last 4 years, 5 years.
yeah.
With the Dallas Street, the Jefferson, all that is much.
Yes, and we got it put in this year.
You may have mentioned already, what was the interest expense?
There's about 12 or 13 different loans that the city has taken over the years. The CGMA is the biggest part of that, and they have several incremental loans on it. Yeah, I think Jennifer's got the list somewhere upstairs that she plugs those numbers in and has a number next to it. There's like 12 or 13 different loans. The big water, the 16-inch water line we put out to the college is part of that. The sewer line across the field up to the lift station, or the treatment plant. The treatment plant's probably still on there.
The line that goes over to Cartwright.
Yeah,
Did you say that?
the line that goes to Cartwright, it's just the big stuff. Well, and part of that loan next year will
Public
be,
Works building.
we're proposing to do the elevated storage tank that we need on the west side to help get ready for that development too. So that'll be another incremental addition to that debt service as we go forward.
So the loan payment on the separate one item at 310 is separate from the interest you're claiming, or the different expense.
Right.
Those are two separate.
Yeah, the interest on all of those notes and then the principal, we just show it separately.
Is the CGMA take or pay, is that, shared water with Anna and Melissa and everything? Why, if we're gonna operate at a much higher pumping capacity, so we're projecting not to take any from there? Two questions. One, why did we have an increase in the budget on the expense side, but there's no, where's the revenue side? I don't see the line item for the revenue side. You're saying that Anna.
The revenue side gets thrown into the consumption rate and the base
So it
rate.
gets thrown into the water
Yeah.
deal. Okay, so that answers that. But the 180 to the 210, if we have pumping capacity to host our own water, then why are we paying more?
That's the take or pay contract in North Texas. Every city originally was required to take 59.25 million gallons a year.
Yeah.
So you're paying for that whether you need it or not. So every year when North Texas raises their rate, we get that corresponding rate increase.
So that's the increase.
That's the increase for our 59 million gallons.
But it's refunded back with what
Well,
we're not using.
it's not 100% refunded back, but there's a mixture rate that goes on
That Anna.
that Ann and Melissa use to do that.
Okay.
Now, once House starts taking, like you said, once House starts taking water from that line, all the current agreements go away and everything shifts to proportionality. So if we take zero, we pay zero.
Okay.
So,
When is that?
It's something else.
or close to zero. I don't think we could ever pay absolutely zero, but it becomes proportional to what all the other cities.
On usage.
Yeah, based on usage. Right.
Is there any idea of how much they would have to grow?
How's been making noise like they're gonna have to start taking water in the next year or so. So, I mean, we didn't take water until 3-4 years ago. So, it was in the ground 10 years before we ever used it.
And did you say 6, the repairs was actually on this budget or no?
The what?
The well 6, the repairs to get.
Oh, well, 3.
Well 3, no, well 3 is not in this budget. It'll come across as a capital item in this budget. Once you see it, it'll be a capital item.
In this budget, is there a significant impact on new homes to the budget, specifically homes being built in Metro? Is it 5% of the budget is Metro homes or?
No, well, yeah, that's actually on the latest
Not on
slide.
this budget here.
Yeah.
It will be in the following budget.
Right. Because, obviously they're a month or 2 away from actually starting building. They only got the 4 to 6 months to build the house. So,
No,
7 or 8 months from now, we might get our first piece of revenue from them. So we're not counting on a whole lot. That's why even Thompson and now that the Pulte has started back up again, I don't know if you saw that, they started back up again.
We'll get a couple of model homes probably in the original development. When they do come online, though, their consumption rate will be 120%. Their consumption will be at 120% of the rates that we have here.
We'll see that next year from now.
Yes.
You're seeing,
Well, and of the two, in the model that we have too, they're gonna have 223 lots available in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
We're only projecting, and then it takes 4 to 6 months to build them. We're only projecting that they're not gonna build all 223 lots at one time. And history has shown us that they do about a quarter of those. So we'll get 50 lots the following budget year for them.
Okay.
50, 50, 50. So it is about the growth rate that we would expect out of them. So we've got that in our funding model, and when Lane's shown it to you, it's called the absorption rate. So when you see that, that's kind of how subdivisions build. And so
When's Dallas gonna start that project? Dallas Street,
the what, I'm sorry?
the Dallas Street project? When's that gonna start?
We don't get funded until, if you approve this budget, we don't get funded until October, so. And that's the missing gap from where we finished Jefferson back down to Shreveport. So that finishes that loop. And that's it, the water side of it's an impact fee, is that bringing the main loop through town?
Okay.
To-
Create new infrastructure.
Yeah, so, yeah, we'll get to that here in a minute too. Jim, will you go back to the combined rate?
While you're doing that, you said our average was about 9,600 gallons, average consumption from it. Do we have a distribution on that? Is it a bell-shaped curve? Is it small? Is there anybody using 2,000 gallons or 3,000 gallons?
Yeah, Jennifer just sent that email today, about 50%.
Not too long.
You have your email? Ken? Or here, I have it.
Just approximately.
Yeah, no,
I know it, I read it. We have,
I read it too, and I did the calculation based on it.
we have about 950 customers that are in that 5,000 range.
Okay,
And then if you take it to the next level, it's about 700 in that 90 or 10,000 range, and then it's about 250 in the next one up. Then it falls way down, and you get 2 to 3, that number up there.
Yeah, of these 1,800, half, 90% of them are in the 20,000 and less range. So about 90% of them. There's,
what you're saying about half,
yeah,
half or less than 10,000.
about 1,700, yeah.
And average really is a mean, a median as well.
Yeah.
The reason I ask, I mean, if you look at our water rates, we're selling water pretty cheaply per 1,000 gallons, below 5,000. But when you look at compare our total bill, water and sewer, it's a 5,000 level, it's not a good comparison to our other cities around us, because our base rates.
Yeah.
Just, once you step up to 10,000, no more competitive. I'm just wondering if it would be, I'll use the word ethical, probably not the best term, to just delete that line at 5,000 gallons, but it sounds like we've got a significant number of people that would care if that 5,000 gallon thing is.
Yeah, about half of it, about half of them are 5,000 left, 950 out of 1,800, so, yeah, that's.
I hold it, I got it, one of those.
Let's talk impact fees per little while, if that's all right.
Well, just at the bottom, whatever color that was, if you take a look at the total bill, you can see that we are already at the 10,000 rate, we are more than competitive, we're $20 less than Melissa, competitive with Anna, and, under Howe, and competitive with Tom Bean, and Gunner, it's a whole different thing, and even Salina, that what, gold or orange or whatever color that is. So you can see, just take that, the average user, that's kind of, historically, that's the sweet, if you can take your neighboring cities and see that you're right in the middle of all that, that's kind of.
Yeah.
How many use 5,000?
Single people.
Sorry, I didn't have that.
Some of the, well, a lot of the older houses, fixed incomes and older houses that just don't have sprinkler systems, you can get by with about 5,000 gallons a month. I mean, you get
I
three.
have my sprinkler system, I bet too many kids.
But you have a
Back to
pool.
two. You have a pool.
All right.
Do it.
And that was my question a moment ago, I mean, that's the line that doesn't look great. 5,000 gallons. We're asking them to pay $112. Compared to everybody except Hal, that's a lot. And those are, in theory, the people who can basically.
So, So, and we talked about the impact fee, like, it's a couple of years ago, Lane took impact fees out of this budget, and now it's its own budget, so just to kind of give you, we're forecasting about 180 new lots coming online next year. 100 of those, that first 50 that we talked about with Mantua, Thompson will be, the first 30 or 40 out of Thompson, so the 100 lots at the new, you passed the new impact fee rate about 12 months ago. All the new platted lots go at 7,000, and the ones that were already on the books go at 3,300. We still have about 80 lots, Stone Hollow and K-Hop and History Maker to fill up and get there. So we have that absorption rate for there. We have, I think, K-Hop and Graywood have 2 more years of absorption rate. We expect Stone Hollow to be built out by the end of next year. So, that's where those numbers come from. And you see that will generate almost $1 million in impact fees. And then the project funding that we have scheduled are the Dallas Street Water. We're running water and sewer and building a lift station out of Thompson. And that's out for bids right now. So we have a little cushion there just in case budget, prices go up on us. But we'll know what that budget is in a minute, shortly. We have the first installment, that's the design of the elevator storage tank. That's that contract.
That's just the design.
Yes.
Good Lord.
It's a $4 million.
I know, but it's just robbery. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah.
Seriously?
But the Nunnally design, is that changing, like, is that running it all the way up and down Nunnally?
That's running it up to Texana to Van Alstyne Parkway.
Yeah, because my mother-in-law lives on that street, and that's the worst street from a sewage backup, also from a drainage standpoint, the smell comes all the way from Graywood down, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I have there, you said that something about some prices on the bidding and stuff like that, that's not gonna get kicked off, is it? If the pricing or the bidding goes up with the other ones?
If it goes up, this will cover, we're getting $1.3 million from the developer out there to build what is forecast. Right now, our opinion of probable cost is 1.2.
Okay.
Just in case, this is kind of the insurance factor. If not, we can, that surplus can go somewhere to another project. It can help, if we rebid Dallas Street, that will help, it acts as a buffer for the other projects there, or we have with the $600,000 budget in the impact fee fund that we can elevate a project, but it has to be for new growth. Can't be for maintenance and repairs. It's got to be for new growth.
Yeah.
So that's what we expect in on the impact fee, and that's what we expect out. That's what we're budgeting for right now.
We have a current balance in our impact fee account of $646,000. I would propose, it doesn't have to be part of this budget, but we use that to service the debt for the elevated storage tank, so there's no additional expenditure to the taxpayers here. So once that loan is done and, we have a payment schedule, we'll service it that way.
I think you mentioned this, Lynn, months ago, slept since then, but did we put out for any grants or help from the water and sewer with the state of Texas?
Yeah.
And have we heard anything along those? Is that included in any of this?
Well, the water tank was through the state revolving fund, which is really, it ends up being a low interest loan.
Okay.
Through the GTUA, through the Greater Texas Utility Authority. There aren't really any water and sewer grants. There's the state revolving fund and the SWIFT fund, which is a technology portion. And we apply for those when we have a project that fits that niche, in which the water tank does. But yeah, the water tank is part of that program, so.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more along, so anything that we do from a new standpoint, so whether that be, you know, we create, trails, tracks, like we did over by the schools in the city, we build a new park over there. You know, the infrastructure has to be changed underneath it to match whatever's being built, you know, new. How does impact fees be used for that? Does that affect that? Or, you know, for new development, 'cause it is new development, I would say, but I don't know, I'm asking you guys at that.
Well, and that's why, the Dallas Street, the loop going up Dallas Street and going down Jefferson, and then now, it was originally going up into that open field between, LaSalle and Benton's office.
Okay.
We can still make that loop going up Nunnally. And it makes sense to go up Nunnally to be closer to in town. So we switched, it's still the same part of the loop, we just moved it east. And that allows us to get to the Nunnally design and fix the sewer. You know, next year you'll see a capital item for the sewer, but the water part of it will be impacted. Kind of exactly how we're mixing and matching where we can to still meet the requirements of the code and what the funds are being collected for. It's just how we get there.
Brian, there's a provision in our development agreement with Rizlin that allows us to charge them impact fees to help pay for that elevated storage tank because it was listed on our CIP. They are, in part, the reason why we need to put that elevated storage tank out there and support the project. So, while we've broken off negotiations for a new DA, we are still enforcing the old DA, and our attorney, Mark, is doing a letter of correspondence right now to get that worked out. So there could be some additional finances there, but there's no guarantee that I can share that over.
What's next? Okay, back to Lane.
Well, kind of a discussion. I would like not to have another pandemic, thank you very much. More importantly, it's difficult to operate a city without some element of reserve. And we need to build a reserve. It's time to take that action. So we've deferred many projects. You saw the list. I would really like to take those on. And as I told Justin, it's not a year for shiny new things unless we're putting water in it somewhere. Other than that, we want to create a budget that allows us to work on the things that really need the needs as opposed to the wants. So that's what we put together here. 4% wasn't arbitrary. I mean, the process is I asked each one of the department heads, or in this case, a contractor to come to me with their proposals, and then we meet on them and discuss them, and I'll chop things out based on kind of where I want to go with the city, and then we ran the numbers, and it was unsatisfactory. To have a 8% increase was too much. Even though the fact is, had we taken regular rate increases, we probably would be at that level now. not. So 4% was where we ended up with kind of the budget that we had. And we feel comfortable with it. Is there a better way to do things? I'm sure there is. It's always hard to come up with a perfect world, but we feel like we put together a pretty sound plan.
More questions or comments?
I don't think there's a vote to approve. Yeah, there's no vote to approve tonight. This is a workshop. I wanted to share. So we will go back and look at that $9,600 or 9,600 gallon usage and run that number to see if, so y'all can have a look at that. And when we get together next Thursday, a week from Thursday, talk about the general fund, we can start lead off with that discussion so you can see it. Thursday of next week, I'll have individual department heads here. We'll talk through the general fund budget. We have kind of been handicapped because we do not have certified tax rolls yet to determine property tax revenue. So we have a budget built on expenses and we know all the revenue lines except for probably the most critical, which is property tax. So once we know where that number lands, we'll run it the first time at the rate that we're at today to see if our planned expenditures will fit within that. And if they won't, then we'll tell you that. Talk about all the options because kind of the rules and as to how we determine tax rates has changed. There's a ceiling on it now. So, but Jennifer and I have attended all the educational workshops on that. We feel comfortable with, how that's determined, and we'll be fine through all of this. But we just don't know without having certified tax rolls what that revenue is. Now, I anticipate about a 12% increase in property valuations for the city of Van Alstyne based on preliminary numbers that we've seen. But until we have finals, it's kind of difficult to get there. We hope by the end of this week that we'll have as close as you can get to that number, and then we'll plan our budget on that so that any adjustments we need to make internally before you next Thursday, we can have made those adjustments, so we're presenting a balanced budget to you. We'll do that, and that'll give us about 4 days to get that accomplished. So that's all we have for tonight.
Would it be possible to get a copy of that Excel spreadsheet? Like,
With the rate spreadsheet? The rate spreadsheet?
So there's like at least two ways to look at this. I think when we're discussing it with constituents. One is year-over-year increase. I thought it's 4%. Given it didn't increase in last year, it was very reasonable. But people are going to go out and compare us with our neighboring cities, and Beverly, and South Grayson. That comparison is very well dependent on what increase. Just be aware of that. If you have real heartburns like this, tonight is the time to ask city staff to go back and reevaluate something.
we still have until, we'll have another meeting next Thursday, and then when do we actually vote? It's not gonna be, it'll be at the next actual council meeting, or will there be a special meeting for that?
There'll be a special meeting later in August to vote on the budget as a whole.
Approving.
What about a council budget workshop on the 28th? That's 30th, Thursday, 30th.
Yes.
And then, yeah, I mean, I'm sure y'all have been doing this longer than I have. The average citizen won't necessarily understand that we don't set property valuations. All they know is that property taxes going up, oh, and by the way, they're raising by 11 days too. What you guys doing with all this money?
Yeah, it's, I get it. I pay property taxes and buy water too, so I get it completely. Our budget is such that if council would like to lower base rates, or we have the ability to go through and eliminate projects to make that balance. Not something I would like to do. I think our job is to present to you what we need to do, not necessarily what we want to do. And that's what we've done here. So we postponed project for so long that it's just time.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, raise rates, you get, pushback. You don't raise rates and cut projects, then, crap hits the fan and people complain about that, and then it's a revolving cycle.
Yeah.
Literally. It's the same thing, we talk about Melody Drive, we talk about Dallas Street, and taking and everything else, and the projects that have kept from going on downtown. And we have new development all over town, especially on the west side, and some come on the east side, those developers, they put state-of-the-art infrastructure that ties into what? Nothing. So we want to revitalize downtown, we want to revitalize some of the older parts of town, but if you want to go buy 3 lots, what are you gonna tie into? And is it worth tying into to revitalize that? Well, you're gonna spend more trying to make it work than what's worth. So at some point, we have to face what we've got. And it's not just this council or council before and council before. When I first came on, they had raised just rid of taxes. And we had to do that because we couldn't pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's just,
We dropped our city tax last year, that's.
Well,
By a hair.
last year, we didn't take any water rate increase, and we reduced the tax rate by a fractional amount. The year before that, the year I first got here, we took the 4% water rate, and we reduced our tax rate from 6.1 to 5.959. So
It doesn't show up because the valuations go up so much.
that's the
Right.
hard part, you know, that we take steps here, but valuations say property go up 12% a
I
year.
know, Grayson County, anyway, I'm so broad.
Yes. But,
Okay,
you know,
yes, sir, well said. I agree. This,
See that here for so
we need
long.
to be prepared for
Cracking
any
up stuff here.
it's not an attaboy job that you have.
We're trying to get it there.
I mean, it will take raw. I mean, in some of the civil classes and stuff like that at TNO, we're talking about growing infrastructure, problems with infrastructure, wells versus surface water, and adding elevated storage, and can you share elevated storage with another municipality if you have, if they're on the same lines, and how to split the cost, and how do you, what population do you start having that consumption going back? But again, it goes back to, you have a really wet year, nobody hear you.
It would have devastated us previous year. This year was difficult because it rained forever, but the year before, it never stopped raining, and it would have devastated us if we had made that switch. We're just not big enough, we're not there yet.
We're getting there, we're just not there yet.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? We come to item 5, it could be time to adjourn if someone would make that motion.
I'll make it.
A motion to adjourn is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Got it.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you all. Well done.